On today's episode, we welcome Jason McDonald, founder of Turtini. Jason, welcome.
Well, thanks, Maxine, for having me. Appreciate you.
Always. So, talk to us about your background and how you got into starting Turtini.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually spent about 10 years in the Red Hat sales channel, and then I took about a year off, a year break, and then I really wanted to get back into it and see where we could kind of take it. And my background's really in more of the technical pre-sales, and then working with consulting, Red Hat consulting as well too. So as we've been building Turtini, we've been really jumping more, feet first into the deep waters of Red Hat consulting and Red Hat pre-sales and all that kind of stuff to really empower, our federal customers. So we're kind of in the public sector, U.S. public sector arena with Red Hat when it comes to that.
And how long have you been doing that for your experience and everything?
Yeah, so I've spent about 10 years in the Red Hat public channel, public sector channel, and then even before that, I worked in banking, and I spent another 8 or 9 years working with the federal government through a task order on the government travel card. So really, my whole career has been around task orders and blanket purchase agreements and government-wide acquisition vehicles and things like that. So always had an interest in technology, so I switched from banking over to technology sales, and kind of found my home with selling Red Hat. So, yeah.
And what was that like? Why did you like technology so much? Where does it come from?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed banking and learning about where money and financial transactions happen and how that happens. And I've also had like an interest in technology as well too. My undergrad was in technology, entrepreneurship, and innovation, and then I went back to school for cybersecurity. So always had an interest in that layer. And then on the banking side, I noticed a lot of activities were happening where training activities, conference activities, technology-driven events that the military was leaning into, or is leaning into, has leaned into. And so I wanted to, and then worked with a lot of our vendors as well too, technology vendors, like we are today. But I always found it fascinating to see the pre-sales activities, the demos and the workshops and things like that. And I wanted to go to those conferences. I wanted to get in, kind of on that sales side. So I wanted to see what that life was like. And so I jumped into it, 10 years ago, and I've been kind of loving it ever since and seeing where I can grow, within that environment.
Nice. And I think right now you're the founder of Turtini. So what's your role into that business? Are you just the decision maker? Are you the IT guy? Like where are you positioned in
Oh
there?
man, yeah. When you start a company, you're pretty much everybody. Now we're lucky enough that we have a couple people, on our team. There's a few of us, and then we have lots of great subcontractors. So everything from our CPAs to our attorneys to our back office, all of that is subcontracted, and great support system. Banking, finance, all of that stuff is in place. So we're lucky there. But even with all that being in place, there's still, and the benefit of AI these days as well too, to ask like, help, how do you do this? Lots of great support there too. But even with all that being said, it really comes down to networking, relationships, and what is my role there? It's kind of creating that mesh network of people that you can go to people, whether it's formal, through contracts and agreements, or if it's informal, through just chatting with friends and chatting with customers and getting quotes out the door and things like that. But yeah, as far as my role goes, it's enabler. Anytime you're a leader anywhere, or in a leadership role, you want to, I think, be an enabler for your team, and your team being people that are directly working on the team, and also those partners of yours that are working adjacent to your team as well.
That's a nice place to be. So basically just a leader, a little bit of everything and then doing the network at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, you're always kind of developing your network, personal and
Yeah.
professional network, but you're also, I think, there to help ideally enable your network to continue doing what they're great at, as well. But for me, I also do a lot of the pre-sale stuff. I'm a builder, at heart, I would say. So like, I enjoy kind of creating content that can be shared, and ideas, and generating ideas, and working with other people to generate ideas on what they want to do, what they see their role as being. Yeah, just lots of enablement activities, and all of that is very person focused. It's focused on the individual and the individuals we're working with and what their needs are and how we want to enable them, I guess.
Yeah. So from what you saw, maybe with your business or your experience in the past in the government, how does it is it changing for the IT for them as of like system or what are they improving? What's the big change?
Yeah, yeah, I see a bigger drive into trust networks, and what I mean by trust, whether you're talking about zero trust as a concept, or if you're talking about trusted partners, or if you're talking about trusted people that you're working with, I see a big drive into streamlining those relationships. And what I mean by that is, historically the government has always purchased off government-wide acquisition contracts. They've purchased off pre-competed contracts. The GSA contract is a good example of that, and others. But once you're into that trust system, what I call trust system from a procurement standpoint, and your product is in the system from a trust perspective, and I'll use the example of Red Hat. Red Hat or any other software that operates within the government has to have an authority to operate, an ATO. So, once that trust has been established, it's been, verified, checked, there's third parties that can attest to it, then you can be part of that larger ecosystem. And so that has always been a thing. I see that we're moving farther down, down into that cycle. And what I think that means is that whether you're a user, you're an employee of the government, you are now going into a system, there's checks, you've been authorized to access the system. Those checks now go a step further and continue to, in an automated fashion, continue to verify that you have the need and the ability to see that content. And then I think the same goes through even on the procurement side, continual verification to ensure that you are the right partner, that you've been properly vetted, that you continually operate in an efficient, ethical, and compliant way as far as how the government wants things to work. And I think that other partners, as they're onboarded into that ecosystem, get the same level of scrutiny. So there's probably other, more advanced ways of building trust into the system. But I think that automation, trust, zero trust, integration of AI, and being able to kind of have guidelines and guardrails around the use of that AI all speaks towards the concept of trust in the system.
For people that maybe don't know what Red Hat is, can you explain it quickly? What
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
absolutely. Yeah, I always tell people Red Hat is it's infrastructure software. So whether you're talking about the operating system or if you're talking about management of a data center, making sure that your patches are up to date and that your software that's running within that data center is configured the way you want it to be. There's a solution out there that Red Hat publishes, that Red Hat maintains. Really, Red Hat maintains and offers a support for open source applications. And what that means is there's code out there that Red Hat contributes to, others contribute to it, and then Red Hat brings it on, they harden it so they can productize it, and then the product that they're selling isn't just the hardened code, but it's also their ability to service and to maintain and to provide patches for that code. And the government really likes that because of FISMA. So it's there's standards out there that allow that kind of guide the government into using productized software that has a support networking system behind it for the purpose of patching and ensuring that everything is always configured the way that they need to be configured.
is it kind of like a bit like a SaaS platform kind of thing, or
No,
like an ERP? What kind of platform?
yeah, it's not really SaaS. It's not really an ERP. There certainly is software out there that is, enterprise resource planning tools and things like that, and certainly SaaS software like Salesforce and everything. But we're not currently partners with some of those, names. We primarily partner with Red Hat, but Red Hat is really designed for a lot of on-prem and custom cloud applications that people can, run in GovCloud or AWS or, in the Azure environment. Yeah.
So You mentioned like data centers. Is that mainly what like Turtini and Red Hat wants to concentrate at to help, or what kind of service are they aiming at more?
Yeah, so really, we work with customers that have their own, their own data centers, whether they're on-prem or if they manage that through a cloud service, a trusted cloud provider, like AWS or Azure. But there's these, they'll have large deployments of servers and virtual machines, and they'll want to manage those virtual machines in a more efficient way, making sure they get the most bang for the taxpayer's dollar. And so they're always looking at comparing different vendors that provide those types of services. And Red Hat is a very strong provider, in the virtualization space, a very strong provider in the automation space, a very strong provider in what they call the containerization space as well. So containers are where you can streamline and package applications into deployable code that can be run in data centers or run on-prem as they call it.
And in your experience, did you saw data centers that weren't like super optimized, or that their data wasn't like super good, and you actually had to go in there and
Yeah, I
install
mean,
it?
there's always challenges out there. Yeah, I mean, one of Red Hat's core products out there for a long time now has been called, Ansible Automation Platform, and it's been out there productized now, literally for a decade now. I think it was 2016 when it first came out, and as a productized solution from Red Hat, they acquired Ansible from a startup that really put it out there into the world and out into the wild as an open source tool that could be used to automate data centers. But I remember thinking back then when when Red Hat onboarded Ansible, that okay, well, we'll do this for a few years and then it'll be everywhere, and then that will be that, and we'll stop talking about Ansible, we'll talk about the next thing. Just and that conversation never ended. The conversation started 10 years ago, and it still continues strong to this day. And yeah, Ansible is absolutely embedded into the automation and the configuration of data centers around the world. But there's always new people coming in. There's always new hires, there's new ideas, there's new initiatives and things that people want to do. And of course, the product itself has evolved so much from where it was. It's been completely rebuilt from the ground up from where it was 10 years ago. And that happens naturally, with all products. They get rebuilt consistently. Like in the example of Ansible, it was the start of a story. It wasn't just a chapter in a story. And I've noticed that with a lot of Red Hat products. OpenShift is another product on the containerization side that I thought, okay, well, once we get through Ansible, then we'll really start selling OpenShift, and then we'll start selling OpenShift virtualization. Throughout all that time, it was the beginning of a story for Ansible, and it's the beginning of a story for OpenShift. And these are transformational products when you're talking about the data center realm, on how we go about and being more efficient with how we run, our data centers, how much they cost, human time that's needed in order to maintain them. And so those stories continue to evolve. They don't just, it's not open and close book or open and close chapter. But yeah, there's always people coming into the data center, and there are always people coming into the industry, and they're learning about these things for the first time, and they're using their own creativity to apply what they want to do with it, and that keeps the book open, keeps the chapter going.
And would you think it's like the new kind of talk about data center with like Oracle, AI talking about like building so many and pitching money back and forth, saying they're gonna do it? Do you think that talk basically brought back the data center conversation into people,
Yeah.
and now people are just trying to start something to get into that wave, or even before that, it was kind of a subject that people were in it?
Well, yeah, I mean, data centers, AI, they've been around for decades. Other versions of AI than what we've been, productized, the ChatGPT, and what we know it to be today. IBM's been working in AI for a long time. Google's been working with AI for a long time. So it's just a lot of those things. Those data centers are a byproduct, I would say, of the increasing need for compute power. But that goes back to what we were talking about just a second ago. There's always new ideas. There's always new creative solutions that we're trying to solve. And we've been doing a lot of that, with our compute power. And the compute power is what those data centers represent. Now, there's efficiency as well, too. We've all heard about like how big AI data centers, serving customers and consumers and institutions require a lot of physical resources, water and cooling and electricity to run them and everything. But like, as we get better with our hardware and we get better with our software, the resources that are required to cool them will become more efficient, and we'll have different techniques on how to build the data centers where they live, and what the cooling requirements are required for those CPUs. So you know, it's not any one thing solves all these issues. It's bringing to bear the creativity of all of us to do that. From hardware vendors and manufacturers to software vendors and manufacturers, and ideas, from the field. People actually, operators of these data centers and the servers and the virtual machines, and also, the people who are selling them and having those interactions between the OEM, the reseller, and the operators. That's where those ideas come from, and they're bubbled up, through the product teams to deliver on those ideas, concepts.
And I think coming back on the conversation we had before this podcast, I asked a lot of you about like sales into the government space. Like how do you guys like get to selling to those guys, or actually marketing your system as like being like pick me instead of someone else? How does that selling actually work for the government side with projects?
Yeah, I would say it's really kind of it's always going to be the network you have, and not meaning like your computer network or the internet or anything like that, but it's that personal network. It's like being involved in industry. It's being a contributor, being a participant in the industry. It's going to conferences. It's meeting, making new friends and having great conversations with them. It's about getting on the phone and doing those pre-sales tasks, which is, whether you're talking to a customer about, what are they trying to accomplish, and or it's doing a workshop or a demo, or doing some type of an assessment with the customer. It's all those activities, sharing that back with your OEM, sharing that back with your distributor, sharing that, sharing the assessment information back with your customer, so that they can grow and evolve what their own, needs are, so they can get the best bill of materials possible, when they finally go and ask for a quote, and then they can bring that quote, to their leadership. You can, get it approved and then get it through procurement, and make sure that they have everything they need on the contract vehicle they need to procure from. But it's really just kind of outcome alignment is what we call it. Finding out from your OEM, what do you want to do within this agency? Finding out from the customer at the agency, what are you trying to do, with this engagement or with this product, and just aligning those outcomes, determining what those outcomes are, and then aligning that to the needs of the customer. In the case of public sector, the needs of the taxpayer and the mission of that agency. So just a lot of alignment happens, and that doesn't happen with AI, and it doesn't happen with some type of network or computer network. It happens through conversations, and sometimes meeting people on site or in person. It happens through having the ability to email them, give them a call, text them, ask questions of what they're looking for, and then getting that content back to them through the appropriate channels.
So do you guys at Turtini want to be? Because I know there's some government work contract where you have to like pitch your price and then they can compare with other businesses. Do you guys gonna be that business that want to try to get this contract, or you just get subcontracted by a bigger business?
Yeah, I mean that happens, anyway. We're a small business, obviously brand new,
Yeah.
and the government oftentimes puts out contract vehicles or requests for quotes, RFQs that might require a small or some other set aside. So if your company fits those set asides, then absolutely respond. And a lot of times too, the larger companies will do a tiering system, where they have a prime and a subprime, and the prime maybe fits those needs, a small or some other set aside, and then maybe the subprime delivers on those, or some combination of that. But there's always, whenever you're working with the government, you're always going to be, there's always going to be RFQs out there, requests for quotes. You're always going to be replying to those quotes. You're always going to be trying to jockey for the best pricing, through your OEM as well too, to see if you can win, with the best pricing. But I don't think that that's just one component of what it's like to compete and to partner and to be a partner in a channel program. I'm kind of using the word partner more and highlighting that more than competitor because I think in a really healthy ecosystem of partners for any OEM, you want to have you want to be able to identify different partners and their different strengths. Maybe a strength you could look at it as a strength might be like a certain set aside, but I think a strength can also be who has a really deep consulting bench, who has a really great pre-sales team, who really understands the product, who is very efficient at processing the transaction. And if you might choose, a partner here because we need someone that can handle a very large transaction. You might partner with a partner over here because you need a really great pre-sales team. So you want to be able to mix and match, and you want the partners in the ecosystem to be able to work together in order to do what's right for that to align with the goals of the mission of the agency that you're working with. And so I don't think there's ever going to be like one partner, one size fits all. You're in a really healthy ecosystem. You want to be able to have a number of different partners that bring different elements to the sales chain.
So it's not just a question of price; it's a question of like the expertise of that business, how they can help compared to that other one.
Yeah.
I thought it was mostly like this one is cheaper for the same service, so we'll go with this one. So I thought that was kind of
Yeah,
was plain.
it's there's a lot to it. There's adjudication of each individual partner and what they bring to the table, the value add, so to speak, in the FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation, which is kind of governs how the U.S. acquires technology for government entities. But there's also kind of like who does have the best pricing. So it's best pricing for this commodity technology, and also to what does the partner bring to the table to this agency, with the best pricing, and what else are they bringing to the table. So there's a lot going on that results in the sales chain working and the government getting what they're seeking, what they're looking for.
And for a business like yourself that's just like starting, how do you have like a vision or goals in the future with no really mindset of what kind of revenue your business is gonna have? Since it's always like you might have it, you might not have it, so you can't really be like, okay, so next year we'll hire this person or this person. It's always like just if we get a contract, then we'll do something, or it's more of a what kind of approach do you guys go with?
Yeah, it kind of depends on who you're hiring. So, like, if you're hiring a consultant, then full-time consultant that sits on the bench, meaning they're not actively deployed on a task order or a contract, then yeah, you do have to make a decision. Do I want to invest in this, in this capability in the hopes that we're able to sell it? Or, some businesses will make a decision like a 1099 consultant that, if we win this contract, then we will reach out to this recruiting company and hire based on who they have in their database to do this. But there's also like, you need to make sure that you have all of your support and your infrastructure in place too. So you have to have, your back office team, people who handle contract vehicles, people who handle processing of transactions. They can do quoting, they can handle collections, they can follow up with a government purchaser if funds haven't cleared yet. So you need to be able to have all that infrastructure, and you need your sales infrastructure, you need your leadership infrastructure, you need your pre-sales infrastructure to really be that value add within the sales chain. And the pre-sales activity I'm kind of referring to is the workshops or demos or assessments. So there's a lot of different skill sets and a need for a lot of different people. And like any business, you kind of have to look at the market and say, what is the capacity here for the market and for a new entrant into it, and at what size do we scale at right now as we're ramping up, what we believe will be a niche that we can operate in. And for us, that niche, is we want to be able to do some of these assessments, and we want to be able to be a great partner for workshops and demos and any kind of enablement that's required to adjudicate, to kind of decide if the software is the right thing for the customer. We want to be able to be there and kind of work that niche. And we also want to be able to make those connections, be able to make those connections with who are the end users of these different agencies, and who are the procurement officers, and what do they need to be aligned to make a decision on this product that they're looking at. So for us, that's kind of the niche. It's both bringing you know serious people in the government that are looking for solutions together, into the sales channel, and it's also being able to deliver you know activities that are meaningful in order for them to make those decisions to actually go to procurement and purchase.
And when you talk about like a niche in the government, is it like army, then air force, then what are those different type of niche in the government? 'Cause in my mind, like government would be like one big niche by itself. So I guess there's like
Yeah.
all different smaller niche under it.
Yeah. There's obviously lots of niches. Lots of different agencies make up the government, and those agencies have different needs. So like the needs of the Army are going to be different from the needs of like NOAA, or the needs of the Department of Energy. And so like as you are working with, these different agencies, they self-identify what matters to them. Maybe they're going through an infrastructure build, like they're going to be building out a data center, and they're looking to get quotes for Ansible or quotes for RHEL, or they're looking to virtualize their data center, and they're looking for quotes for OpenShift virtualization. So no matter whatever the conversation is, it's really dictated by the buyers and the end users and what their goal is for their unique project. Now, we can see overlap in similar needs across different federal agencies, but each of those needs, sometimes they can share what the or in more detail what those needs are, and sometimes obviously they can't share in many details what the product's going to be used for. But that's all part of being a professional in this industry, is really understanding that nuance of when you can learn more about what the product is used for, and when you need to just be able to provide the product on its own without much context behind it and what it's being used for.
Then, and I just want to circle back into, I think we talked at the beginning, the trust about the government maybe towards the network or towards systems. How's the trust towards AI for government? Are they open to it? Are they kind of closed-minded to it? Are they a bit scared of it? What does it look like for them for the AI base of it?
Yeah, like any technology implementation, it varies based on the agency and what their own guidelines are. But that really comes from their cyber team, their cyber department. Like what's going to be allowed, what are they allowed to use, what has the authority to operate. And we've noticed, Copilot seems to be acceptable in a lot of agencies, because it comes with their Microsoft 365 subscription. But there's some agencies as well where they're not using, Copilot, or maybe a set of users have, been able to set a use case and a proof of concept for Claude or something else, and they're able to use that kind of in a test environment. So the government uses test environments, like anyone, test environments, production environments, and they have guidelines around what can be used where and why. So we're noticing that yes, there is some adoption of some of the more enterprise level, I would say, like AI tools. But then when you look at like what Red Hat's doing, Red Hat has Ansible AI, has OpenShift AI. AI is built into everything it's doing, just like IBM builds AI into what it's doing, VMware builds AI into what it's doing. So there's still a lot of integration of AI into the existing tool sets that are already out there that the government does use. And then when you look into, okay, well, we have the government operates off of like, okay, we're working off of this system that we purchased, and then they have to authorize the future system, the system that is now available, publicly available. That has to go through some level of scrutiny before that becomes available for them to acquire or for them to load onto their various networks. So the systems that they have been using, they are getting AI integrated in them, and future versions of those same applications and systems will continue to have AI in them, that will be more useful to their mission. And once that gets approved, and in future, just like anything, as those things are getting approved, then you'll see more and more AI built into the systems that are being used by the government, and they're just hard baked in there.
So I thought it's always like a security thing because you cannot just put any LM or just private thing in there and just talk about it about government stuff.
Yeah, you can't test in production. Like yeah, it should not be happening. But and it doesn't. Generally speaking, it doesn't. But the government and all the different agencies that make up the government, they have a great system of test environments that they can run this stuff on. They have great cyber teams that can analyze it and kind of adjudicate it, but determine, and they work with the manufacturers on that process to determine how can they integrate it in their systems to make sure that nothing downstream breaks. And that's really what it's about. They want to make sure that as software evolves, that it's been properly hardened, meaning the manufacturers have taken the right steps to ensure that as much as they possibly can, that there's no security risks in the newest version of the software. And then the government goes back and they look at the documentation and they review it and they apply their own principles to it to make sure that it fits those standards as well. And when it does, then they can say, okay, now this version of that software, can now operate within our environment. And that's when they can move from like the test environment to a production environment. And after it's been tested and each of those individual agencies have said, yes, not only do we know that this has an ATO to operate within the government network, but we've also tested ourselves in our sub-agencies network, and we haven't noticed anything that's of a concern. And now we feel like we can now, move in. Our cyber team has now agreed with us that we can move it into production.
That's nice. So coming back to your business, Turtini, what's working well in the last year that you guys started that you maybe thought wasn't about to go as well?
Yeah, what's gone well, just chatting with and working and getting back in the sales channel with Red Hat and, meeting and saying hi to everyone, eating lunch with different people and, kind of building up those partnerships where we need to have them. Small companies, so we rely a lot on the partnerships and the rest of the ecosystem partners. So it's, being able to recreate, those relationships, that's been going well. Also doing, getting into the demos and the workshops and producing technical content, that's been going really well. Just being a part of the ecosystem again has been going well.
And what's the hardest part of building that business that maybe came up for you guys?
Yeah, it's the trust part. It's not easy to start. I always tell people it's not like flipping on a switch to become a federal partner. Like you have to. There's a lot of groundwork that has to happen, and that's getting into partner programs, getting in with your distributor, getting contracts signed, getting reviewed by third parties to make sure that you are who you say you are, and all of that takes time, but it also takes a lot of resources and sharing information, sharing documentation, and making sure that you have everything that's needed to submit financials and company financials, and everything has to be professionally produced, professionally reviewed. You can't generate any of this stuff on your own. It has to be done by professionals and subcontractors and third parties that can help tell your story and then once you kind of get past all that and partners start onboarding with you, then I always say that's when the fun begins, because that's when you want to start working with your customers and networking with customers, networking with your OEM sales reps and your distributor sales reps, and sharing your story of what you do, what your niche is, what you bring to the table, and how you can help sell into their territories, or in the case of a customer, how can you help enable them with whatever it is that they're seeking, the product that they're seeking.
So what's the big goal for the next year? Is it getting those first connections?
Yeah, I mean, continue. Yeah, absolutely. And kind of continuing with building out that network of people that know our story and are interested in it, and happy to be on board with us. So, yeah.
That's great. So if people want to learn more about Turtini or reach you, where could they go?
Our website's great, turtini.com. We have a LinkedIn as well too. But yeah, it's or look me up as well too. My name's all around this Turtini thing. So, but yeah, reach out. We have a little messages button, and we'd be happy to chat for sure.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. That was an amazing conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Maxime. Appreciate the opportunity.